Everyone, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And boy, do I have an exciting guest expert for you today. This is one of those topics that I've honestly been meaning to tackle for myself for years and years and years. Literally at least 6 years at this point, and I've always put it on the back burner. So I'm finally tackling this for myself, and I want to hold you accountable, and I want you to do this right alongside me. So today we are talking to profit strategist and CPA Jamie Trull, and we are going to talk about how to legally and ethically hire our kids and pay them in our businesses. And I knew going into this conversation, because I know Jamie and we did a little pre-interview conversation about this, I knew there were benefits and upsides to hiring your kids and paying them as employees. I had no idea about so many of the things that we're going to talk about in this conversation. So I'm literally recording this quick introduction because I am diving right into Jamie's program after this, because this is something that I really want to get set up by the end of the year. And after you hear this conversation, I think you're going to feel the same. So in this conversation, again, we're going to talk about age appropriate tasks for your children depending on their age and where you live. We're going to give some specific examples of things kids can do inside of your business. We're going to talk about how to know how much to pay them, how to make sure you are documenting all of this and doing everything above board in case you get audited. She's going to talk about exactly what to do after you pay your kids. So how you should hire them, how much you should pay them, where the money should go, where you should be investing it, what return you can expect. We're going to cover all of that. And then we're going to give you some amazing next steps about how you can start executing everything you hear in this video. And Jamie has been kind enough to give us a free resources about exactly how to get started. And Jamie's also been kind enough to give us a free resource to kickstart the process. So she has a paid program that is step by step by step, but she also has a free guide that, again, is the perfect place to get started. So I'm going to link that free guide and her paid program all about hiring your kids below this video description. So if you have any questions, comment below. I'm going to tag Jamie's YouTube videos and her channel as well, because she's definitely somebody that you want to follow. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jamie Trull. Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks, Michelle.
Welcome. I'm so excited for today's conversation. But before we get into it, do you want to start off by introducing yourself and letting us know who you are and who you serve?
Absolutely. So I'm Jamie Trull. I'm a CPA turned profit strategist, because CPA is not the most fun title to have, but I've got the credentials, but I don't do that kind of work anymore. I'm not doing, preparing tax returns or anything like that. But now what I do is I really focus on education around finances for women. So typically women, and I focus really very much on small business owners. And I just love kind of helping them understand various different topics. So whether it's, learning the basics, if you're starting a new business, all the way up to becoming the CFO of your own business, or even just some like specific tax strategies like we're going to be talking about today. I love teaching it in a really accessible way that's not super boring, like a lot of this content can sometimes be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that because, I read all the books, I read Profit First and things like that, but
Mhm.
a lot of times it can be just really overwhelming and really dry. So I really appreciate your kind of spin on teaching this topic. I always find your stuff so engaging, and I am going to link to all of Jamie's, her YouTube channel and her Instagram in the show notes. So please feel free to check it out after the show. But can you tell me a little bit about what we're going to talk about today?
So yeah, today I really wanted to talk about one of my favorite strategies, which came up really last year a lot. A lot of people started asking me questions about hiring your kids in your business. And is this a legitimate strategy? I think a lot of people saw things on TikTok and wondered, is this for real, right? We see a lot of things on TikTok and they can be a little bit questionable sometimes. But I really wanted to spend some time diving into the rules around this. How can you do it? How can you do it? What's the right way to do it? Is it beneficial to do it? Because I'm a mom of two young kids myself. And so, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a huge opportunity here. And so I hired my kids, especially my 9-year-old son this year, and he's been working in my business. And we'll talk a little bit about the things that I have him do here in a minute. But it's been a really great way for a lot of reasons to not only bond with my son, but also teach him about finances, right? Teach him about managing money, teaching him about working a little bit, in inappropriate ways, of course. And it also has been great from a tax perspective. So there are a lot of tax benefits, both for you and for your child, that, come from having an arrangement like this if you set it up correctly. So I think that's the big if, is that, yes, this can be an IRS red flag if you don't do it the right way, right? But there are ways to do it. The IRS is completely fine with it. There's a whole section about businesses hiring their own kids and getting tax breaks from it. So we just have to know what we're doing. And even a lot of accountants aren't super familiar with it. So that's why I wanted to make something that would be helpful for people to be able to do this themselves without breaking the bank.
Absolutely. And we will get into those amazing resources that you've created in a little bit. But before we get into the how, because I already have a million questions around, what's appropriate for kids to do in your business and things like that. But before we get there, can you just provide a little bit of an overview about the benefits that you alluded to for both the kids and us, the business owners?
Yes. So I'll start with the tax benefits, because those are probably the most tangible, right? Which is the fact that when we are taxed, right, in our business. So let's say we have a regular LLC, and it gets a little bit more complicated. I'll just allude to this. If you are an S corp or a C corp, it's still possible, but it can be a little bit more complex. But let's say that you are an LLC, and so your profit is getting taxed, and that profit is getting taxed at your rate, right? So your profit's going to be taxed. You're going to get payroll taxes on that, which is 15.3% when you're self-employed or have an LLC, and you're going to have income taxes at whatever rate you're paying income taxes at, which let's say it's 25%, right? Plus then you have state taxes on top of that. If you pay your child, depending on how much you pay them, and I typically, again, most of the people that I work with, they're not looking to employ their kids, around the clock, right? My child is 9. He's not working a 40-hour week. He doesn't even work every week, but I can still pay him when he does work, sporadically in my business. And so my goal is to pay him up to $13,850, which is the standard deduction for this year, 2023. Okay. And if he gets paid that or less, there are essentially no taxes that he's going to have to pay because of his age, because he's working for a business that is wholly owned by a parent, right? And because of the fact that he's being paid under the standard deduction. So I'm shifting that amount of income, right, from my tax rates, which are, think maybe 30+% when you add it all together, 35%, down to nothing. So $13,850, when you're saving, a third of that, that's pretty sizable. And you can shift that down to your child and pay that to your child. And a lot of people say, well, what's my child going to do with all this money? Well, you can pay for, whatever expenses you have for your kid, like their sports fees can come from that money, right? You can be the custodian of that money if you want to, and let them have some spending money. You spend that money on other things for them, or we'll get into this later, you can help set them up for the future as well, which is one of my favorite things to do with this. So it's just a huge benefit to be able to shift that income into a different tax bracket, but still be able to use it for the things you're already using it for.
Absolutely. And that's something that I would have never even thought of, is
Mm-hmm.
kind of dividing that money between those different categories. And just to clarify, again, for my own understanding, I'm kind of using this as like a personal consulting call. After that $13,800 for, this year, 2023, they can still technically be paid. There just might be taxes associated
Yeah.
with those
And
additional.
yes, absolutely. But it's still going to be less, especially if they're 18 or under. It's still going to be a lot less because they're still not going to have to pay payroll taxes. And so that's an important piece, is you're saving 15.3% no matter what, right? So you're not going to have that payroll tax piece. You may have a little bit of income taxes, but again, they're going to have to pay income taxes at their rate, which if they're making $20,000 is not going to be the same probably as what your rate would be. And so you're really shifting that income from a higher tax bracket to a lower tax bracket. So that's probably the most direct and the reason that most people start doing this. And then I'll talk about a couple of my favorite things about it, though, that are a little bit more hidden. which I didn't even really think that much about to begin with either until I started doing this and realized how great this is. But for my son, one of the benefits has been just the time we've gotten to spend together and being able to do things with the business. He actually enjoys it most of the time. And it's been some good lessons learned, I think, for him too. And we've had a lot of conversations around money and how to save money and what to do with money and savings goals. And instead of me just giving him money when he, wants to go to the movies or something, right? He can use his own money and he can save his own money for things, and we can have those conversations. And I feel like he feels a sense of independence as well. And you have to do it for what's appropriate for them. My 6-year-old also does a little bit of work in my business, not as much, but she gets paid a little bit too. But obviously the conversations are a little bit different with her because she'll pretty much just go spend her money on Roblox immediately. And we'll have more of those conversations later. But it has been a really kind of fun thing to get to open up the conversation about money, make it less taboo. And I really, as somebody who thinks that money habits really start young, and the importance of teaching our kids about money, especially if we didn't get those lessons, is critical. So that's one of my favorite things as well. And then the last thing that is honestly, I think, the absolute best part is I've also opened up a Roth IRA for both my children. And typically, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA unless you have earned income. So one of the amazing things with a Roth IRA is the fact that the earlier you start investing, right, these earnings will grow tax-free in a Roth IRA. So they can contribute to it. They won't have any taxes because they're at a 0% tax rate right now. So they can contribute up to $6,500 a year, maxing out at however much you pay them, right? So you can't, if you pay them $3,000, the max would be $3,000. But if you pay them that between, let's say with my son being 9, if I, put $5,000 a year into a Roth IRA, between him being 9 and 18, right? That's what, $45,000, that I would be putting in there, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if you do the math on that, by the time he retires, that will likely be worth, based on, rates of return that we've seen in the past, over $3 million. So it's really incredible how we can set our kids up for the future just by taking advantage of the time value of money, right? The most important thing is to start early and allow that compounding to happen. And they don't even know it's going on. It's just in the background and there for them as a safety net. It's an amazing gift that you can give your kids. So that's my favorite part. I'm getting excited to, we're going to be putting in our year-end contribution for the first time at the end of this year. And I am just like almost giddy about it because it just feels like a gift to my future child, right?
Absolutely. And there's just something so special about being able to, contribute, even though he's not aware of it yet, but knowing that future benefit and how grateful he's likely going to be in the future. It definitely, adds to the benefit of just us being parents and business owners, because we've already seen so many benefits of, having more time freedom, being able to have some of the extras. But this is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs leave out. And so I'm so excited to talk about it today. And one other thing I wanted to mention, as somebody who grew up in like a very traditional household. So my dad had a full-time job. He was in the office every day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. My mom stayed at home. I think, a gift of involving our kids in our businesses that also goes overlooked is just getting them involved in entrepreneurship and showing them that there are different paths. And I think the more involved they can be, the more open-minded they're going to be in the future. Not necessarily to become entrepreneurs themselves, but at least knowing not only that it's an option, but exactly what it looks like from behind the scenes. So I think that's such a cool point to make.
And that's real life education, right? I mean, we send our kids to school, but how much can we learn just by doing? And as they grow older, right? Younger, we start them with what's appropriate for them. But as they grow older, there's more and more that they can do. My son is already getting excited about getting into Canva and doing graphic design. He's 9, right? But it's amazing when we give them the option, what they can step up to. And those are skills that are going to help them in no matter what they do in life.
Right. So there's short-term benefits, there's long-term benefits. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What are some examples of, I guess, age-appropriate tasks that we can have our kids do? Because I think we're all sold on the benefits, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yes. And this is the key thing, right? Because I think where it gets a little sticky and where people are like, oh, this is, a scam or you're an IRS red flag is when people are, employing their kids in a way that their kids aren't actually really working for the business, or maybe they are, but they're being paid just exorbitant amounts of money for what they're doing, right? Like they're doing an administrative task for $50 an hour. Well, that's not really going to work, right? So the key is for it to be reasonable in what you would pay somebody else. But there really are some ways, right? And if you're looking to maximize, because most people are looking to maximize what they pay their kids if they're doing this for tax strategy reasons. So there's been some negative press too around hiring your kids because some people will do this as a way to exploit children, which is absolutely not the thing to do, right? We're not going to exploit child labor. We're not trying to, not pay them. Most of the time when I'm talking to people about this, they're looking to maximize these tax benefits. They want to pay them more, but they want to make sure that they're not getting in trouble with the IRS from this, right? So there are lots of different things. Obviously, the easiest things to think about are like administrative tasks and things like that, or even like cleaning up your office, cleaning up. I know, with play gyms, there's probably a lot that can be done, around there that are just little tasks, things, I don't know how many people send out mailers anymore, but that was the big thing. Stuffing envelopes used to be the big thing that people would do. But I think even more creatively, and especially in this 2000s world that we're in, there are also things that they can do that are really more around marketing and advertising and things you might already be doing that you could pay your kids for, right? So for example, if they are showing up on videos for, ads or something like that for your play gym, that is absolutely something you can pay them for. And in fact, in some states, they're now requiring that you pay your child if they are being used in working in your business. Yeah, exactly. And so, if you're taking pictures, right, with your kids and that's showing up, you're using that on your social media to market your business, right? Then that is something that you can pay them for. And those are my favorite because those, if you go and look out the market rates of what, there are lots of different sites like kidscasting.com and things like that, where they post these opportunities for kids to be in ads. You can actually pay them quite a bit and legitimately support it, right? So it's a lot more than like your $12, $15 an hour. We're talking about, I just did a shoot yesterday with my daughter where we were shooting some reels and things like that we're going to use for ads for our 12 days of Christmas that are coming up. And I'm going to be able to pay her based on a project, right? Which will probably be a couple $100s, even though she, didn't work for an entire day even. But it's completely, I'm going to make sure that I document it. That's one of the things I'm sure you'll ask is how do we make sure we don't get in trouble, right? Because you do need to document it. You have to, make sure you have all your ducks in a row if you are ever audited, that you can say, here's my support. But as long as you have that, you can pay them for those things. So those are some of my favorite things for paying kids. And that means, right, you can pay kids as young as, babies, if you're using them in marketing and advertising, right? You can pay pretty much anybody for that kind of thing because they are actively working in your business. They would get paid if they went to a shoot for somebody else's business, right? So you can pay them through your own as well.
That's really interesting. And just a couple questions. And I don't want to get too technical here because I know that your resources dive a lot deeper into this.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, when we're paying them for these, you call them shoots, it doesn't necessarily need to be a professional photographer on a professional set or anything like that, right?
No, absolutely not. No. I mean, as long as you're using it, if the intention is to use this in your business, then that can qualify, right? And I think that's one of the things where you can do a little bit of research to get a couple ideas. Don't always go with like the highest one, right? Like you probably aren't going to pay your kid the same thing that if they were doing an gosh bagosh commercial would pay. But you can see like, okay, I have a small business and, if I had to hire a child actor, I would have to pay for them to do that. Whether you would actually do that or not doesn't really matter. It's just what you would have to do if you did it. And again, I think it's really about the documentation and making sure that everything is supported. That is really the key there.
So I totally understand that we should be documenting the time spent, the
Mhm.
rate, and things like that. Would you also recommend maybe taking note of where we're getting these numbers from and the source?
Yes. Yep. I take screenshots a lot of times when I'm doing this, when I'm doing the research on the different tasks, and I pay my son based on various different tasks in the business. So he has an administrative rate, he has a graphic design rate. It's not as much as I would pay like an actual graphic designer who has a background in it, but it is a little bit higher than his administrative rate. And then he's got a rate for marketing, right? And so all of those I have documented, and they are, I put screenshots to make sure that, again, it's really more about preparing just in case you are ever audited, not because this is going to be a red flag for audit, but because anybody can be audited at any time. And you want to make sure that you have all of that so that you can say, here's the documentation. The people they're really looking for in those audits are the ones that are just kind of willy-nilly doing this without any, without going through, what they're supposed to be doing, the real steps to get there. And that's honestly most people. So if you do this the real way, the right way, and I really recommend that people do that, then you will be protected, right?
Yeah. So another technical question, and I apologize,
Mhm.
but when you are talking about, having your son utilize Canva, and I know my
Mhm.
son, one of his favorite tasks to do in my business is editing YouTube videos. He does
Yes.
a lot of like transitions and things like that. And he really enjoys it because it's, like you said, what he's interested in doing potentially in the future. Are you allowed to pay them for hours spent training, or if they take like a course on how to do a particular task? Because I made my son go through like an entire like 4 or 5 hour course. Is that
Yeah.
something that we can do?
Yes. And so the great thing is anything that you would pay a W-2 employee, because they will be a W-2
Okay.
employee. So a lot of people ask, like, can I set them up as 1099? Well, 1099 implies they are independent contractors and that they can function independently. And it's pretty difficult for your 9-year-old to be right, like in a place where you could defend that they are doing that. And there's not really a benefit to that because, again, because of their age, they don't have to pay payroll taxes anyway. So there's no benefit to you. You're not saving anything by making them a contractor like you would potentially if you were hiring, somebody else. So you do want to hire them as W-2, and then yeah, you can pay them for anything that you would pay a W-2 person for. And I pay for the time that my people that we do trainings and things like that. All of that, if it's something for work, right, are things that I can pay them for. And that's a really great point. And I'm actually like, ooh, what could I do for my kid? Because I've done the same thing. And I think it also is such a great opportunity then to be able to give them this incredible education as well. And then that's time that they're spending, that's also helping you from a tax perspective, which is amazing.
Right. So, I mean, all the benefits, right? They can take a course, so they're
Yep.
getting the education, you're getting the tax benefit, they're getting the tax benefit, and you can say, I will pay you X amount of dollars, and you can now save this and work towards a goal that you're
Yep. And
looking
you
to
can
achieve.
deduct the course, right? Because that course is going to be something that you were using to train your employees on. I mean, it's perfect, right? So you're deducting what you're paying them, you're deducting the cost of the course, you're paying them for the hours worked. I mean, again, just like a W-2 employee, that's how it would work for them. So that's how it would work for your child as well.
That's amazing. And my son's Christmas list just grew, by the way, because I'm going to be buying him more courses now that I have all this information. So thank you for that. I don't know if he's going to be thankful, but he will be. But, a lot of people listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, they are brick and mortar business owners. So what I
Mhm.
love about this opportunity for us specifically is that, you can really make your child's work fun, right? It can be a combination. It doesn't
Yes.
just have to be graphic design. It doesn't just have to be education.
Yeah.
They can also be sweeping the floor. They can be, I know my son loved to pack orders. He loved
Mhm.
to help me get ready for events, and he loved to set up the, tables and clean up after. And that was something that was really enjoyable to him. So there are so many different ways, and those hours really add up. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking of our opening task list, our closing task list. My son used to help with all of that.
Yeah, inventory, like anything that you have them do. I was just talking to somebody who has a subscription box business, and this is something perfect for that, right? Because they're doing a lot of packing and different things. So there can be, get creative with it. And, again, it doesn't have to just be one thing. You can pick what makes the most sense. I find that over the summer, that's when my son did the most work, right? When he's in school, maybe a little bit on the weekends, but really during the summer, we did a ton. We created a lot of content. He was on my YouTube channel a bunch, right? I paid him for all of that. And so really there are a lot of opportunities, and they're making money and they're happy and you're getting to spend time with them. And it's the perfect storm.
Absolutely. So I think we're all, like I said, really excited about this, but are there any downsides or things that we need to be careful of outside of what you already mentioned, like
Yeah.
making sure we document and things like that? Are there any other downsides?
I don't think there's very many downsides. There are just watch outs, right? There are just things we want to do correctly, because either, right, we could get in trouble because we don't have it correctly from a legal perspective. There are some states that have their own laws. So we've been talking mainly around federal law, and federal law exempts children working for their parents' business. So you do maybe want to, call your state Department of Revenue, depending on what kind of state you live in. They could have their own laws around that. Most will follow federal law, though, right? So if your kids can work in federal law, if that is allowable, then they most of the time can work in the states. But that's something just important to check on and make sure. And there are, certain industries, right, and certain jobs they cannot have under a certain age. So again, that's something to check in with your state. Mostly that's going to be dangerous jobs. So hopefully most of us know, like, hey, I'm not going to put my kid on a bread slicer, right? But they spell this stuff out. If it's something that's dangerous and manufacturing, that kind of thing can be a little bit dangerous. And so you want to avoid things like that. They have to be appropriate, right? You have to be paying them appropriately. So those are really the main things. And I think the other thing to know too, because maybe some people here don't have, maybe they have an S Corp, right? If you're being taxed as an S Corp or a C Corp, there are some different rules around that. So the key with that is that you can still employ them, but if you employ them directly through that S Corp or C Corp, you're going to lose some of those tax benefits. So those payroll tax exemptions you won't have. There is a way around that, though. It's a little technical, but it's called creating a family management company. It's not as bad as it seems. So that's just something to know. A lot of people don't realize that's an option. And so they're paying a lot more to their kids, or they're paying a lot more in taxes than they need to, because they weren't aware of, kind of this other route that you can go in order to keep the same tax benefits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And is that something that your program helps with?
Yes. So that's I have a program called the Hiring Your Kids Toolkit. And it has everything that you need to hire your kids, no matter what kind of entity type you are, or where you live, right? It's going to walk you through everything you need. We have the trackers, the contracts you need, right? Because we want to make it legal. That's the other thing. We have all the guides and the video lessons to help you. So it's definitely something people can do themselves. And we have guides to getting them set up on payroll, and things like that. So all the little things that you want to make sure, the ducks you want to make sure you have in a row, we have the step-by-step for that. And even getting them set up with a Roth IRA, right? And showing you the calculation of how much you could turn the money into by contributing to a Roth IRA for them. So we have all of that included. And the family management piece too, if you are an S Corp or a C Corp, to help you with that. So we're really excited. This has been actually completely surprisingly to us, our biggest seller for this year. We rolled it out during the summer, and it was a huge reception that we got for this product. So I've been very excited, and I really want more people to know that it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, when we connected, I knew exactly what you did. I knew about your background. I had no idea that this was something that you had a resource around. And the second I heard you mention it, I think it was on somebody else's podcast, I was like, I have to reach out to Jamie. It's something that's been on my list as a business owner, honestly, for years. Kind of
Yes.
like you said, I think I heard about it on TikTok, maybe during the pandemic. And I thought the same things that you did. I thought, this isn't real. This has to
Mm-hmm.
be, just one of those things for, clickbait or views. But I knew that you were a reputable source. So I was like, I know Jamie is going to be the perfect person to talk about this. And I think kind of what you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, there's been a huge explosion in entrepreneurship in general.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been more and more people owning their own businesses, having side hustles. And just, I mean, to clarify for anyone listening, I know most of the people listening are brick and mortar business owners. Is this something that you can do if you have a side hustle business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a business is a business, right? So again, I mean, any type of business that you have that you are making income from that is a business, then yeah, you can hire your kid in that business. And of course, there are thresholds where, you know, you have to determine whether it makes sense because there are some costs, they can be minimal. And one of the things I talk about in the toolkit is how to minimize the costs associated with it. You have things like payroll, but there are ways to make that pretty minimal as well. So there are some costs, but most of the time the benefits are going to far outweigh the cost. If it's only $200 or $300, it's probably not worth it. But if you're going to be paying them, you know, $1,000, $2,000 or more, it's probably getting to the point where it's worth it, especially considering the fact that you're going to see those benefits year after year after year, especially the younger your kids are.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that kind of kept popping into my head as we were speaking, and I just wanted to make sure that it's included because I'm absolutely going to be enrolling in the toolkit. We're going to link it in the show notes as well for anybody who's like me who is ready to jump on this immediately. Um, does the toolkit help with kind of not just how to document, but what systems to use and that sort of
Yes.
piece? Because that's something I know I struggle with, even when I'm working with an accountant, even when I have system set up, I want to make sure I'm really utilizing the systems I should be.
Absolutely. So we actually have tutorials in there that are technical tutorials. For example, I have a recommended payroll company. You can use whatever you want, but I have a recommended payroll company, and I will show you how to actually go through the steps to get them set up properly, right? Like how do you make sure they're exempt from the right things, and kind of walk that through step by step. If you're looking for a bank account for your child, we have recommendations for that for bank accounts that we think are great for kids. And then do direct deposit because there's a lot of little rules like that it can get kind of sticky. And so we had to do a lot of research into, you know, what's really out there that people can use. And then we wanted to walk through that process to make it as easy as possible for people to do themselves because we really created this. And we've had some interest from accountants who want it too, which is interesting. But we really created this for end business owners to be able to do this themselves because it takes a little bit of effort. But again, once it's set up and you're done, and then you're getting benefits, you know, for as long as your child is employed by you. So we are just really a big fan of empowering the end, business owner rather than having to pay really expensive, hefty fees to accountants to do this, who may not even really, know what they're doing, to be honest.
Right, absolutely. I've definitely gone through my share of accountants who, maybe didn't understand my business model
Yeah.
or weren't putting me in the right accounts and things like that. So, I really appreciate having this additional resource to work with my in-person accountant who is a little bit more aware of like our specific area and the regulations that we have to comply with. So the combination of this toolkit with the accountant that I already work with, I'm
Mhm.
just so excited about it. And one quick question, is there you don't have to start at like January 1st, right? You can kind of start anytime.
Yep, you can start anytime during the year. In fact, my daughter literally just a month ago said, like, I want to work. She was watching her brother and she saw that he had some extra spending money and she volunteered. So, I mean, that's why yesterday we were shooting reels and she was like, I'm going to sweep your office. And I'm like, great. She's a really great organizer, right? So she's been organizing things for me. And so you can start at any point of the year, just like a W-2 employee, and you can pay them, how you want to. So I typically pay my son once a month. There are some months where he doesn't get paid anything because he didn't work during that month. And there are some months where he makes a lot more, like during the summer. So you can really do that however you want to, as long as it's documented and you're going through the steps that you need to go through.
Awesome. And for those of us who are, definitely excited about the opportunity, but maybe aren't quite ready to dive into the toolkit just yet. I know
Mhm.
I am, but I know some people listening, maybe they haven't opened their business yet. They're just getting
Yep.
started. You have a free resource available as well, right? To kind of help us kickstart the process.
I do. So that is the perfect place to start. If you're not like, I want to do this right now, if you're still like thinking about it, you want to mull it over. We have a 7 strategies to maximize tax savings by hiring your kids guide. That's a mouthful, but basically we have a guide that's going to walk you through a lot of what we talked about here today and give you a little bit more detail and things to kind of think about before you make that decision on whether it's right for you. So that's a great place to start that we'll link below too, that you can grab and get started today.
That's awesome. And I will definitely link that. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Is there a best way for us to connect with you or continue learning from you other than these resources that I've already shared and that I'm going to link?
So we have a lot of great stuff over on YouTube. You can just search my name, Jamie Trull, and you'll be able to find a ton of resources. You can even find some of the videos I did with my son if you're curious to watch them. We did a lot of those during the summer. So YouTube is probably the best place, but I'm just Jamie Trull on all the social platforms as well. And yeah, definitely make sure to check it out, jamietrull.com.
Yes, and you are one of my favorite people to follow on social media, so you will not regret it. I'm going to link everything in the show notes. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. This was fun.
All right, that wraps up my conversation with Jamie. I hope you're as excited about implementing this as I am. So again, if you want to check out Jamie's free guide all about hiring your kids, it's linked in the video description. I'm also going to link it in the comments. And if you are really ready to dive in like I am and you want Jamie's toolkit about hiring your kids and you want these step-by-step processes and documentation tips, everything we talked about in this video, it's also linked in the video description, and you get a fun, exciting bonus when you sign up using my link. All right, if you have any questions, again, comment below. I've linked Jamie's YouTube channel. I've linked her website. Jamie is one of my favorite people to follow, as I mentioned. You will not regret it. She is my go-to for financial literacy advice and everything accounting. All right, have a great day, guys. I will see you soon.